afternoon, everyone. It is Sunday, the 16th of August. It is now around about nearly 6 p.m. on Sunday evening. And I'm just talking to you from London in the United Kingdom. So starting off by having a look at the dollar index. We've been roughly range bound, slightly lower highs, fractionally lower lows, which means we're kind of sort of more bearish than bullish. We really haven't gone anywhere on the weekly. We're still actually finding support at this 93 level. And we really haven't gone much further than that. So having a look at it on a monthly basis, just can see here that in the past kind of prices bobbed around this and potentially recovered from that. At the same time, it's unusual for it to kind of break much further below that. And once it does, it usually heads down towards 91. So at the moment, it essentially just looks as though it is a little bit overextended on that weekly basis and needs to make up its mind as to what it wants to do. I was still anticipating or still waiting on a retracement at least back up to 94.50. And I still think it's reasonable to do that, at least in terms of weekly. Price doesn't really seem to know where it wants to go. The daily is kind of consolidating, and it may well just be that week that it's going to stay where it is until it picks up the energy and heads lower and continues from that. So this week, what I'm going to be doing is watching the recent lows and highs. I'll mark those in now, just go through, and these will be the areas where I'll be looking for breaks above and subsequently breaks below that. This is really it, expecting to see if price will make up its mind or if we're going to be range bound, and then subsequently looking for that. So I lean sort of 60-40 towards the upside first before price heading down lower. It's done it recently. It's done a move higher, just not enough, in my opinion, to let off any of that pressure. But that's pretty much it. So this is how I'm going to adapt to it until further notice. Then having a look at euro dollar. Euro dollar's got a similar issue. It is bumping its head right up against 1.19 level. And this is the same issue effectively that I'm going to be looking at, is following the breaks of the highs in order to continue going long, or subsequently breaking the most recent lows, and just monitoring that behavior. So it's pretty much unclear. It's struggling a little bit with this key level, and therefore the money making opportunities for me are not great until such time as it decides what it's going to be doing, at least for a little bit longer than this ping-ponging between levels. Looking at sterling, again, it's a little bit overextended, produced a potential swing high, but hasn't followed through on that, with a bit of a bearish indecision candle close to a historic resistance level, and it's effectively also range bound. Same thing actually looking at Australian dollar against the US dollar. Has run away, is bumping its head up here against some local resistance, but also hasn't decided to come back down and test the 700 level, that 0.7 level for support. And so just waiting on that. Looks a little bit more bullish, hinting at a potential weaker US dollar, but nothing just yet. And it's also not completely unreasonable to expect the Australian dollar to take a little bit of a breather as well. Then looking at the New Zealand dollar against the US dollar, this has indeed actually managed to do a retracement. Looks a little bit better. I like the downtrend on the daily. All of that just meaning in terms of taking a bit of a breather. So in terms of this, of course, if the rest of them then do decide to do a bit of a move, if the US dollar decides to strengthen, I'll anticipate seeing Kiwi dollar head lower. But at least of the lot of them, it has actually done something that makes sense. Then having a look at dollar yen, pulling back into recent weekly support, potentially testing that for resistance. And as I said, sort of over the longer run, although there isn't a lot happening, it does appear to be drifting very slowly down to test this level, 105. It's currently got an uptrend on the daily, but it is within a weekly downtrend. So that's really it for me, is looking for pullbacks down to this level. Will it manage to maintain its uptrend if we are going to get a stronger dollar? In other words, if the dollar is now going forwards going to ping pong up from that range, then I would expect dollar yen to climb. But really, there's just not a lot of clarity across the board, or if there is, I'm really not seeing it. Same thing, dollar Swissy, the inverse of euro dollar, and it's not exactly the inverse, it's roughly inverse. This at this point in time looking much more keen on heading lower than actually heading higher, which would imply a weaker US dollar against dollar Swissy. Dollar CAD, overall I was looking, there's no real divergence in price here, so this is still got room to continue to the downside, so that also hints at a slightly weaker US dollar. So taking that all into account, and also let's just go and have a look at the news. So quickly go and look at what's going on this week. So what I'll be eyeing out essentially will be the FOMC, Wednesday, 7 p.m. in the UK. Maybe crude oil, but not really too concerned about that. Really, my focus will be around the FOMC meeting, as well as followed, of course, by the next day by the Euro monetary policy announcements, anything interesting there. And then jobless claims, don't expect those to, potentially they will just creep up a little bit. And that's really it. So that'll be the biggest, I think, where the most weight is attached to opinion. But other than that, of course, I'll be cautious anyway in terms of intraday trading around those key levels. So my approach this week is obviously waiting for some clarity to start to show itself, leaning just that little bit more towards. It's interesting, although on the chart when I look at it, I'm actually looking at a stronger US dollar. This is what I'm looking for, is price to do head back into this colored zone and then head lower. The charts themselves are indicating a slightly weaker US dollar. In other words, they're hinting at the fact that this might continue to head lower. So it really just means that on a day-to-day basis, I'm going to have to watch it and see which recent high or which recent swing low it starts to favor, and see ideally if we can get a break above or below, and obviously just being cautious until a stronger trend establishes itself.